Good evening, I'm Sharon Thomas. Parents who'd been fighting a High Court battle to prevent doctors withdrawing treatment from their baby daughter have agreed to take her off life support. Olivia Stanker was born with a life-threatening tumour and has suffered blood infections and multiple organ failure. Our correspondent Simon Harris has sent this report from Great Ormond Street Hospital.
This is the desperately sad case of a little girl who defied the odds to beat cancer, but who in the end couldn't be saved despite the best efforts of doctors here at Great Ormond Street. Olivia Stanker, who was 1 year old on Monday, underwent 2 rounds of chemotherapy, but in recent months has developed severe blood poisoning and multiple organ failure. Her parents, Maria and George, who come from Walthamstow, mounted a legal challenge to try to force the hospital to do everything it could to keep her alive. But this afternoon at the High Court, they agreed with the doctors that there was nothing more that could be done, and it was no longer in Olivia's best interest to continue the treatment. A short time ago, the hospital issued a statement saying this was a very tragic situation. Olivia was an extremely poorly child, but despite maximum care, she was no longer responding to treatment.
Our correspondent Simon Harris reporting there. The number of assaults on tube workers has gone up by 44% in the last 5 years. London Underground says it's partly due to a new policy of encouraging staff to report verbal abuse. But Labour claim it raises worrying questions about staff safety when the tube starts running through the night in September.
I think for the future the Mayor should be looking very carefully at his plans to cut staff numbers and doing a very careful risk assessment. I think it's ultimately wrong to leave staff alone at night in tube stations.
A court has heard that a professional gambler tried to woo a young woman with champagne, unaware that she was leading him into a honey trap. Mehmet Hassan was beaten to death at his flat in Islington last year. The jury heard he'd been killed for his winnings. Leonie Granger, Kieran Jackson and Nicholas Chandler all deny murder and false imprisonment. Estate agents in the capital earned more than £1 billion in fees last year, up nearly a quarter on the year before. The average Londoner paid out £9,000 to the agent who sold their home. And it seems the costs might now be pushing people away from high street agents and online instead. Charlotte Grant reports.
They come in all shapes and sizes, but the way we buy and sell our homes is now changing too. For Jane Brown, when it came to selling the family home, she was put off by the commission high street estate agents were charging. So she went online to avoid paying a £7,000 fee.
Because obviously we've got a young family, we were looking at having another child, so that amount of money is a lot of money. So we wanted to get a bigger house and we could put that into the bigger house, which we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So yeah, we certainly wouldn't have been able to buy this house if we'd had to pay that amount of money in agents' fees.
While house prices in the capital have continued to rise, estate agent fees have also increased. New research shows they made more than £1 billion in commission last year. But some believe getting the best deal can make the commission worthwhile.
When you're dealing with an agent who actually adds value to the process, they will do a lot. Before the process, they'll make sure it's valued properly, it's prepared, the property is prepared for marketing. It shows well, it's marketed properly, and when an offer comes in, it's a fair offer and it's backed up by cash and proper mortgage.
But those championing going online believe it can only help shake up the housing market.
The key thing is presentation, good photographs. A lot of high street agents don't do that very well. The next thing, and probably even more important, is exposure of the property. We put it on 700 websites, including the biggest names, the most well-known brands. And actually you go to a high street estate agent, and these days a lot of them aren't using all of the biggest names.
The Brown family are pleased with their online experience, but believe regardless of how you do it, it's just about finding the best possible deal. Charlotte Grant, ITV News.
And if that's left you wondering exactly how much money estate agents are making in your part of town, head to our website where you can find a full breakdown of all the figures. That's at itv.com/London. Now, it's not the usual sort of thing you see on his itinerary, but today Prince Charles took a trip under London streets to visit one of our newest sewers. His visit was to mark the 150 years since the building of the capital's first one. The latest addition to the Victorian network is being constructed as part of Thames Water's new super sewer project. Toby Sadler has the details.
Prince Charles won't be back here. By Christmas, millions of tonnes of sewage will flood through this tunnel. It's a record-breaking feat of engineering, London's deepest tunnel at some 75 metres. The Prince has a royal connection with the sewers. It was his great-great-grandfather who opened the capital's original system in 1865. The pumping station at Abbey Mills is still in use today. Prince Charles toured here too, celebrating a 150-year legacy.
The highlights was definitely the architecture of the site. As you can see, it's a fantastic building. Just the heritage really of the site and its changes over the years. Originally steam driven, bombed in the war, repaired, returned, electrified in the 1930s, and what we're seeing, the work taking place now, which is to see it through the future.
The Victorian system is ingenious but no longer fit for purpose. It was designed to cope with 4 million people. London now has more than twice that population.
This is the problem. Every year, 18 million tonnes of raw sewage gets pumped straight in here into the River Lee. It's because the system is at breaking point. It can't really even cope with heavy rain. The new Lee Tunnel should solve all that.
So the Lee Tunnel that we're here to celebrate will reduce that overflow by 16 million tonnes. And that's discharging at an average of once per week. And when the tunnel is fully operational, this Christmas time, we will prevent all of that horrendous discharge into the River Lee.
The Lee Tunnel is just the start. In all, nearly 40 million tonnes of raw sewage hits the Thames every year. A super sewer network to dwarf the Lee Tunnel is proposed as the solution. The £40 billion project has planning permission. Thames Water want to start construction next year. Toby Sadler, ITV News.
Mo Farah has mocked one of his fellow GB runners in a row on Twitter. He called Andy Vernon, who's also running in the 5,000 and 10,000 metres, an embarrassment and a slower runner than pop singer Taylor Swift. Vernon had been criticising the lineup at the Sainsbury's Indoor Grand Prix in Birmingham this weekend, saying there wasn't enough talent to take on Farah. Next, some of the biggest names in American football or soccer are teaming up with a group in Hackney which supports young carers. 2 LA Galaxy players appeared as special guests at the Action for Children project in East London, and they did far more than just play football. Will Mott takes up the story.
When one of the most glamorous clubs on the planet comes to town, it's no ordinary kickabout. A football match in Hackney, briefly entering the LA Galaxy.
It's been, I can't really explain how happy I am.
And these are no ordinary kids. They're young carers who look after their relatives in need.
Sometimes I help with the cooking, sometimes we volunteer to do stuff.
I would normally help my mum. So she wants a glass of water, I'll get her it. And then sometimes, or hardly ever do sweeping, but I'll do it if I enjoy it, and then sometimes go to the park with friends and play football.
So it's great to be able to play with guys from LA Galaxy.
Yeah.
Mr. David Beckham. Bex may be their most famous player, but the current team are pre-season training in Ireland and sent a delegation and a donation over to East London to help Action for Children run the project.
It's really interesting for me just to come and be able to interact with them, knowing what they have to do and how they're taking care of at least one loved one, and to have them come in and just interact with them in a way that's comfortable for them and their environment, and to be able to hopefully make a difference.
What do you think's better, lettuce or spinach?
Spinach.
Many of the children cook for their families, so the club's nutritionist ran a healthy eating class before they ate what they'd learned.
Yeah, they're a great bunch of kids. I mean, I grew up in London myself, and now I'm working in LA, so it was great to connect with the kids and understand where they're at in their stages in their life and their development. And they really are keen about nutrition and healthy living.
Just the recipe for the Galaxy to take these children out of their world, if only for an afternoon. Will Mott, ITV News.
Now let's take a look at the weather. Here's Helen Plint.
No, I do not want to be a snowman's nose. Thank you very much. The cheek of it.
Good evening to you. Well, the clouds are already starting to pack in ahead of some fairly unsettled conditions for the rest of the week. So persistent rain to come tomorrow, but between now and then, fairly calm overnight tonight. Those grey skies, of course, keeping temperatures well above freezing. It's a very little chance of frost tomorrow morning, but it will be a fairly dull affair, wall-to-wall cloud, and that continues to build ahead of some very wet and windy fare for tomorrow afternoon. Some heavier bursts in there as well. I'll see you very soon. Good night.
New Covent Garden Soup sponsors the ITV London weekday weather.
And that is it from us tonight. We will be back first thing tomorrow morning with updates in Good Morning Britain. For now, though, from all of the team here, a very good night to you.